This is the first Primordia thing.
Excellent.
So we're here gonna talk, I guess, about your character a little bit, Nathan, because you're gonna
Yeah,
play a psionicist or a
yeah.
mystic, as we're calling
And
it in
that,
fifth edition
and
now.
so far, my least favorite thing about Mystics is the fucking class name,
Yeah, yeah. I just
Mystic.
call it
Like,
a psionicist. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, like a Scion, Psionicist.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
such a better name. Like, but
So you are not going the monk route with this character, right?
no,
You're gonna go fighter
yeah. Well,
because you're
I
going
say
for
that.
the immortal path, right?
Yeah,
Which
immortal.
fighter definitely makes more sense with that
Yeah,
because you get like heavy armor and martial weapons and yeah.
martial weapons and shields. With medium armor. At first, I was thinking Order of the Awakened, because it's kind of the more what I think of as a Scion at very
Okay.
first glance. But I'm going with Order of the Immortal. Um,
Yeah.
and we've got so many wizards in the party that do just straight up wizardy, are going to be doing more wizardy type things.
And for
Um,
people that know psionics from second edition like I do, that's basically psychometabolism,
yeah.
which is all the body augmentation stuff, which is cool. My biggest I don't know if I'd say concern, but my biggest thing that I'm thinking about as far as fitting psionics into the world of Primordia, because I definitely want them there because I was a big fan of psionics in second edition, but I think something that happened with it was it became a little overpowered because of how it interacts with magic. Because creatures have like magic resistance or things like that, and you have ways to cope with magic like anti-magic shells and stuff like that. And the psionics was like this whole other thing, and it was like if you were playing a psionicist, like it was awesome because most creatures didn't have any kind of resistance to what you were doing, and there wasn't really ways to deal with psionics. And in fifth edition, they're saying that psionics is not magic, and so it's not
Unless it
right,
is treated as a way to make a magic effect.
right, like a mind flayer.
Yeah.
Their ability is considered like a spell, basically. So something like that would be affected by like an anti magic zone or something like that. But a straight up like psionic power won't be. But like looking at the immortal, it's mainly just giving you bonuses on stuff.
Yeah.
So it's not so much like you're calling down a fireball and no one can have any resistance to it. It's like you're just augmenting yourself. So I don't know if it's gonna. I don't. Maybe it won't have the problems that it had before, and it won't be crazy
And I
overpowered.
definitely foresee that being relevant when they have because if it's anything similar to like fourth edition, like the Order of the Invisible Hand has a lot to do with recreating magical effects,
Okay.
or whatever, so that might be more relevant because like the immortal, the discipline, immortal, the Order of the Immortals is very, it's like I said, the empowered body idea.
Right.
It's like I very much equate it to, you wouldn't cast counterspell on a monk.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but a certain abilities, maybe from the Awakens discipline, I could see, um, being potentially something that could maybe be counterspelled, or like some of like the conquering mind abilities might be affected by an anti-magic kind of thing. But I'm sure I would hope that's stuff they will address,
Yeah.
when it gets more fleshed out.
Yeah.
But yes, I will most likely go to fighter. I've made all sorts of considerations. It's liable to change, of course, because that's 4 levels, three levels away, 4 levels
Right.
away. Yeah. It'll probably be a fighter. There's a very small chance. I really can't see it being a barbarian. So it'll probably be a fighter, and it might be a champion fighter.
Okay.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
I could see that.
There's various things, but yeah. But going on with the character, um, yeah, Mystic level 2 right now. Order of the Immortal. My disciplines so far. Eventually, I'll have all 3 that I can get access to. I'm starting with Celerity and Iron Durability.
Cool.
And there's actually some solid reasonings. The Psionic weapon one is neat, but it's whenever I get that, it's probably very rare that I'll use that one. A, because I'm not too keen on the abilities, and B, because the celerity and iron durability has like a character reason as to why he would use them more.
Yeah.
And he is a human.
The one nice thing about the psionic weapon, at least at low level, is that it does make the weapon magical.
Yeah,
so,
it counts as a magic weapon.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool.
Which is pretty solid. Yeah. And so I've chosen those. It's a human.
I may have started this too soon because I have very little like concrete nailed down in my world. I have like some kind of vague big picture ideas, but as far as specifics, I don't have much at all. But I thought it would be fun to try like coming up with stuff as a group. So like the city, like I don't have much at all. So if someone's like, "Oh, I think this should be in the city," it'll probably be like, "Okay."
Yeah,
that's in the city now.
Like to cover during that, I've got two pretty solid ideas. A, the background for my character, whose name is Samson, and then B, the background area, which may or may not be covered on for my backup character if the mystic doesn't work out or if he dies or whatever. The Minotaur.
Oh yeah.
So that, and and I'd like to talk about kind of the ideas I had for the god. Like the weather god that they would potentially follow.
Cool.
But yeah, so
did you see the thing about the gods I posted just a little bit ago?
Yeah, you had all the different variants or the the categories or whatever.
So that's really rough and like not like I'm not like sold on any of that. But I was kind of thinking when I did that because a lot of times you have like a storm deity. But I was thinking about having that kind of stuff tied in with Primordia, which is like the earth goddess, basically. And having, like she's the god of nature. So that would include storms, But I don't know. Maybe it would be better to have two separate deities. I don't know. But kind of what I'm trying to avoid is having like dozens and dozens of deities. Yeah.
Yeah. And even if you didn't go with like a storm deity, like my idea, just kind of in a just a touch and go, was the idea that say thunder. This one's based on thunder, and the sound of thunder to this god or this whatever idea is when a warrior dies gloriously in battle. Okay. That's the sound of them going to whatever they hit a big drum. And of course, lightning creates thunder, and what that is the lightning strikes the place that the great warrior died, and stuff like that.
That's kind of cool.
Because the Minotaurs are going to be, major followers of this because they're, the water people and warriors, so storms or whatever. And I also like the rain shroud idea from, what is it, Ravenloft, whatever world that is, what universe? I forget.
I don't know.
Yeah, the ranger. But anyways, stuff like that. But what about psionics? What is psionics?
Yeah, I guess the biggest question is it magic or not? So I guess Wizards is saying it's not, but it can manipulate magic. So I think I'm okay with that. What do you think, Nathan?
My first idea was because of how influenced Primordia is, or how I've understood it so far with magic.
Yeah.
I was thinking, of course, I'm fine with the, it being kind of like a, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of the idea of a sufficient technology is seen as magic, but it's like, where psionics is using other methods to maybe cheat the system. Maybe even magic users don't like psionicists, because they're breaking through. They're using force of their own body instead of the grace of whatever. But my first knee-jerk idea was that it is magic.
Yeah.
And where most wizards and whatnot do their magic outside of themselves, psionicists do all their magic inside. So instead of making the fireball go out, it stays within themselves and it powers their various abilities.
Yeah, I like that. And actually, I mean, I went back and reread the Psionics article, like after you said you wanted to be one. But before I'd read that again, I kind of forgot that they'd taken the stand of, it's not magic. And I was kind of thinking that I was just going to have it be just another type of magic. And I might still do that and still have it work mechanically the same way. And maybe it's like, it's actually harder to do psionics than it is magic. I mean, if you look at what your character can do compared to like a second level sorcerer or wizard, like you have fewer options. So maybe like that's kind of the trade-off. It's like, you're taking this more disciplined path and you're not going to be able to do as many different things, but you're not as susceptible to things like dispel magic or anti-magic shell and stuff like that.
Which, and I also had the thought of is like, okay, let's say psionicists are rare, and they're rare because, like, I guess it's kind of like the favored soul idea of where you have to be an adventurer. Your fate has to have a strong enough fabric to contain this ability. And of course, you have to train your mind and your body. That's why they train their bodies, is to prevent themselves from, exploding with the energy that they that they maintain within themselves. And it also works, like, say, with the Order of the Immortal, where you couldn't counterspell it because to counterspell, you have to know that a person's casting a spell. So if they don't say anything and if they don't do anything, you can't actually do that.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Which I forgot. That's why silent casting or whatever was good. Which I don't even know if that's a thing in 5th edition. And so that's how that goes about. I mean, there could be a lot of reasonings of if the effect doesn't actually come out into the world, you're trying to get inside someone or whatever. I mean, I'm perfectly happy with it being magic. I'm perfectly happy with it being, what other artists, as seeing as wizards and sorcerers do the art, they can be the artists.
Yeah.
Consider them con men, kind of like they're using other means. Like, instead of picking the lock, they're just kicking the door down.
Yeah.
And maybe that upsets people.
Well, one idea I got from what you said about how, because I do like the idea of saying that it's pretty rare. And, a lot of these psionicists are like in their little monasteries or whatever, up on a mountain somewhere. And they don't, most people don't even know they exist. Maybe it's actually really dangerous to unlock that potential. I mean, first of all,
just explode.
Yeah, like first of all, you have to be born with it, and most people aren't. But even if you are, like most people who try to unlock that, it actually kills them. And so that could be why, like you're a survivor. It's kind of like you read Wheel of Time, right, Nathan?
Yeah.
How like, when people learn to channel, if they didn't have someone to teach them, how a lot of times they'd actually self-destruct.
Yeah, and actually that fits really well because, and yet again, I think it was in 4th edition, I think it's an ability whenever I think it's when you're bloodied and when you get knocked down, psionic eruption, like the person contains all of this energy, but when they get knocked down, they lose grasp, and so it explodes out of them.
Oh, cool.
Which was kind of like a triggered idea, so that kind of fits along. But I like the idea of where psionicists are rare because A, people, have to be born with it, and that's rare, and B, it's kind of, they self-destruct via either accident or try to do it on their own. And
we could say, like, basically, if you don't have a mentor, your chances of surviving are almost non-existent. So psionicists that are like out all by themselves, like they tend to not survive. But if you're found by one of these monasteries or whatever, and they can help you, then your chances are a lot better.
And maybe, the way it quote unquote kills you is depending on what like order you're, like, say you're born into being an Order of the Awakened idea. Maybe those people just go like super insane if it kills their mind. Yeah. And the Order of the Immortal, like, it kills their body or any number of things. That's assuming people don't just learn how to unlock each order, but seeing as you can't have more than one order, as so far, then maybe.
Yeah, I was thinking something along the lines of it just like basically fries
being
your
nuclear.
brain. Yeah, like you're channeling this energy through your body and your brain, mainly your brain, you know, because it's very mental, and like you just overload it, and now
Yeah.
you're a vegetable, or you're dead, or
Mhm.
you're mentally impaired. Like those are the three outcomes. You either die, you're a vegetable, or you're like your intellect is like you're like the mind of a child now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. I dig that.
Yeah.
And I think that explains why you don't see him everywhere, and that way we can have this as like a player option, but it's not like everywhere you go you're going to see psionicists everywhere.
And maybe there's some suspicion about it too, where people are worried, that they maybe some yokels think psionists are like walking bombs or something dumb.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like all they hear is that it causes a energy
Right.
problem, and
Right.
people don't understand. And so when they think of psionists, they think like, because people like to make up those little stories.
Yeah, maybe, like you were saying, maybe sometimes they actually like spontaneously combust.
Yeah.
And that only has to happen once for like everybody to be afraid of it.
They see it and then they're like, "Oh, you're a psionicist. My pappy saw one of them blow the tavern apart."
Right.
And
Yeah.
they get a little too drunk and lost control of
That
their
would be great.
psionicism.
So, I mean, we can go through the other stuff if you want to.
I mean,
That's fine.
kind of what I wanted to touch on, more about like the background kind of idea,
Okay.
like talking about the dojos, like focusing still on Psionics, is that while there are multiple, there are different orders, but each
Yeah.
order, of course, has different dojos. There's not, or like, group.
Yeah.
So, there might be like 3 different in the area or in the continent, each that teach the immortal
Right.
order or whatever. There doesn't have to be, but whatever. And I was thinking that this one, well, at first it focuses on that it's Order of the Immortals, that in this city there is a school, and this school is, and please bear with me, a school of dance. It is a ballet school.
Okay.
Or not just ballet, but of different forms of dancing. And what it is in it's a very well known school for the bodily performing arts in that way. And what it is sort of, it's not like a front, but it's kind of like the public view of the Order of the Butterfly. And what it is it's an Order of the Immortal Psionic discipline that focuses on the conditioning of the mind and body through dance.
Okay.
And so the idea, and it kind of goes along with why celerity and Ironhide or Iron Durability are the 2 ideas, is because they have different, whatever levels. And the idea is that the cocoon is the durability, and the celerity is like the butterfly mode. And so they focus on dexterity and constitution. And so all of their, self-conditioning and dexterity comes from dancing and, whatever. And a lot of people, or what people know about the group beyond the dance school, because the people can go, but the dojo outside of the city somewhere, people consider these Knights of the Butterfly to be great warriors, fantastic warriors, but people don't, I wouldn't say not trust them, because the idea for the Order of the Butterfly is when they become fighters is that they're supposed to be gentle and graceful.
Okay.
But when the battle begins, they are supposed to be ruthless and undaunted.
Okay.
The idea there is the butterfly effect. So, a gentle flapping of the wings seems like nothing, and then it becomes a great force.
Cool.
And so, the overall idea is that sometimes people don't take them seriously, because they try not to get into fights. Like, they will fight, of course. They're happy to do it. But sometimes when and it's a smaller order, when they show up and they're like, help us and whatever, and sometimes they'll just leave and be like, it's not our problem, because they feel like, for whatever reason, the fight just isn't theirs, or that right now they are not feeling that center, that the effect. Just because
Yeah.
a butterfly flaps its wings doesn't mean it's going to create a storm, but it might.
Right.
So yeah, the overall arching idea is that it's a dance school that creates these fantastic Order of the Immortal fighters that are fast and durable. And I mean, I expect kind of like the idea there is it's supposed to be kind of not comedy, but to have the sense of why would a dance school have great fighters? Does that just seem like funny and weird to you? But overall, and they're all very like Samson here, long blonde hair. He's a very pretty looking gentleman. They're all very, I guess, flamboyant, very whatever, colorful, whatever. Because the idea there is that you're supposed to, give that false gentle effect to people. You don't want to be discouraging or scary or whatever. And they're all happy and helpful. I mean, in the end, they are great dancers. But they're amazing fighters, and the point is that people don't expect it.
Yeah.
Because they have the butterfly front. And I thought it was a different idea altogether. Like, I doubt anyone's ever created a maybe.
I like it. I think it's cool. So are you thinking that this is something that exists in the city, this actual school?
Yeah. So, well, the idea there is that the school, like anybody pretty much can pay to take dance lessons.
Okay.
Because
Gotcha.
if it is a metropolitan thing. But they use this place as a front to help gather the people that are sensitive to this thing. And then once they figure them out, then they ship them to the, they do the migration to the butterflies migration, to the real dojo where they do their, their battle dancing.
Cool. Yeah, I was actually thinking of that because I was wondering, well, at first I actually had the idea of having like a dojo somewhere out in the middle of nowhere and there's actually a portal there. But then I was like, well, that could be a security risk to the city, to have this other portal. So I thought, yeah, maybe like as the final part of your training, you have to take a pilgrimage to this place, which in and of itself is like a dangerous thing to do and climb the mountain.
Yeah. And the idea is like, because maybe it would be in like a nice grove or a valley. And because their teachings are speed and durability, that you have to be, and they set you off, and it's kind of like one of those like the Native American like spirit journeys. You go with nothing, and you have to make it there. You have to make it there like in a very short period of time. Like normally it's a 3 days journey, but you have to make it there in like 30 hours.
Okay.
And if you die, then clearly you don't have the fortitude.
I like it.
So that's where the celerity and the iron durability come in as kind of their primary disciplines. Of course, they use other ones related to it, and they have different, different ranks or whatever. And so Samson, his background from the Skag, I'm actually using one phrase, is Knight of the Order, and of course, the Order is the Order of the Butterfly, and so he is Samson, the Butterfly Knight.
Okay. So you're thinking they're in actual knighthood as well? Because I wasn't really.
Well, I mean,
that.
it's kind of it's just because like how the Knight of the Order says, it doesn't have to be. It's more of like more of a title and less of a nobility.
Right, but I mean,
like
as far as
kind of thing,
it's
an order.
Are servants of the people and things like that.
Well, no, because it's an order. He's a knight of this order. He's a ranking member of the order. So instead of a guild, which does social things, they're an order that does combat things, is the way I read it.
Because, I mean, what this is in the book is that the Purple Knights are a knighthood in Cormier.
Yeah.
So their whole purpose is like protecting the nation. And I'm trying to find it now, but I was thinking that they had like abilities like that, like for like being like a battlefield general and Isn't it like kind of like leading troops? Like you can restore hit points to like people around you and
No,
stuff
this
like
is
that.
just
Am I thinking of the wrong thing? Maybe.
Yeah, the background Knight of the Order. You belong to an order of knights who are sworn
Oh,
to achieve a certain goal.
okay. Yeah, I'm totally thinking of something else.
Yeah. And so their certain goal, of course, is, I mean, and I guess I didn't touch upon like their mission statement. They seed people to the Adventurers Guild. This one, at least. I mean, people they quote unquote graduate, and then they move off to become adventuring party members or whatever. And they're kind and honorable and helpful.
Okay.
And so their ultimate goal is to spread, oddly enough, spread peace, but at the same time, kill evildoers. Because
Spread
they're
peace
supposed
through
to,
violence.
yeah. Ultimately, what they want is that everyone is peaceful like the butterfly, but in the end, they can create a great storm.
Cool. I like it.
So that's but yeah, it's the Knight of the Order background, so it doesn't have to be.
Yeah,
most
I was
knightly
thinking
orders-
of the new Paladin archetype.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
what
you
I
were
was
thinking of Purple
the-
Knight, yeah. Which
yeah.
it's called a banneret, I guess.
Right.
If they're not parts of the Cormier, but yeah.
Yeah.
Though the term knight conjures ideas of mounted, heavily armored warriors, noble blood, most knightly orders in favor and don't restrict their membership to such individuals.
Yeah, we'll probably want a different, call it something other than a knight. I don't know what we would call it. Something that fits like your concept better.
Yeah. And I guess the only thing here is because it says a skill as appropriate for your order and it gives a list.
Uh-huh.
Instead of one of those, I went with performance because they're a dance order.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yep. Yeah. I don't know if we've actually got a couple people in the chat, and someone mentioned, you could tie the Blade Singers in with this, which I don't want to do because that's like a specific elven thing. But I know in like second edition, like Blade Song, that was one of the proficiencies that you either got or had to have was dance. Yeah, because that's part of the style. So
yeah. The and kind of as I said on the forum there, the Order of the Butterfly is restricted to elves and humans. Elves, humans, half elves. They don't let non-potentially dexterous things in, and they're also kind of racist towards ugly things, or prejudiced.
Sure.
So things like, if there was a such thing as a good goblin, they would be kind of, because they're kind of whatever.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah, cool. I really like that. That's awesome. The Order of the Butterfly. Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, right?
Very much, very much. Touch it right on the nose.
Yep.
And I've got that down. Of course, I haven't written down so far any names or any ground in places. That's a bunch of X's that need to be worked through.
Yeah, I just realized I should probably ask everybody at some point how comfortable they are with being put on the spot. Because some people just don't like that, but like kind of what I'm thinking is like this Order of the Butterfly, like this is kind of your thing that you're coming up with. So if or when you guys like went there, like I would just be like, well, Nathan, tell us what they see. And, if you're okay with that, like you could describe like what the grounds look like, or, some of the NPCs, or as much as you wanted to, because this is kind of your baby.
Yeah. So, and that's my favorite thing, is that we're moving away from those pre-scripted adventures to something that we're writing, because Dwayne and I talked about this. It matters because now our characters will matter. And that's my favorite thing. Our characters and our ideas.
Yeah.
Because that's by far my least favorite thing about the pre-scripted adventures, even if they're okay, is that the adventure doesn't care who you are.
Right. So yeah, I on my list of things to do today is to come up with a good name for my Adventurers Guild and the Adventurers. Hopefully something other than Adventurers and Adventurers Guild. But my idea there is that there's going to be an actual organization that you become like affiliated with, and basically if you're not a member, you're seen as like an amateur. So you could still find things to do, but people aren't going to really take you as seriously. They're not going to pay you as well. And you're going to, like, the guild kind of vets contracts, so they make sure that this is actually something worth our time and not just, like, it's actually a ghost and it's not like some kid pulling pranks or something like that. And so my thought is that when you guys start out, you're not a member of the guild yet, because like as a group you have to like prove to them that, you know, you're worthy or whatever, and kind of like the first adventure will kind of hopefully be that, where then you can go to them and say, hey, we did this thing and, you know, we want to become members. And then what I'm thinking is once you become a member, that can be a source for like adventures. Like I'm thinking of doing almost like a choose your adventure thing, or like a RPG video game. Like I can be like, hey, you know, you go to the guild house and they have these 3 contracts right now, and you can do one of those if you want, or you can do something else, you know, but all 3 of those are kind of things that I at least have some idea. So if you're like, oh, we want to go investigate the haunted mansion, you know, then I'm like, okay, cool, we'll do that, you know.
Yeah, and that's what also that's what Dwayne does at the ending of our Shadow of the Demon Lord. It's kind of like, here's 3 ideas I have, like at the very end of it, here's 3 ideas I have.
Yeah.
Of course, you guys can suggest other things.
Right.
But if you'd like to tell me which of these 3s you like right now, then next week I can be sort of prepared for it.
Yeah, that's a great way to do it. And I think that's what I'll do too, is at the end of a session say, hey, what are you guys thinking for next week? And then I'll prepare. And it could be one of these things that I've shown you, or it could be, oh, we want to go investigate this thing we heard about, or we want to go to Nathan's monastery or whatever.
But so far it looks like I'm the guy up front. Which isn't a problem, because as a human I did variant, of course, and took medium armor master, which I've never seen. I guess I've always skipped over this feat. You know, and what's really great about it is medium armor counts as light armor, so you don't take the disadvantage. Well, it treats it in the way. It doesn't turn it into. I misspoke there because it's relevant that it's medium armor stuff. You don't get the disadvantage on stealth checks, and it can go to 3 of your AC bonus instead of 2. So I have an AC of 19, which is fantastic.
Nice. Yeah.
I got my shield. And when I channel Iron Durability, I'll have an AC of 20. So nice. I will, and if I ever get the slightly better medium armor, whatever that's called, the higher tier one, half plate.
Yeah.
That would put me up to 21. So.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I'm not sure when this happened. I mean, it must have been 4th edition because that was the only one I didn't play. But where we got this idea from MMOs of DPS tank healer in D&D, and like I've never played it that way. And unless you have a character who has some way to force NPCs to attack them, like I just don't think it's like, why would the monster attack the most heavily armored person and ignore everybody else?
I guess the idea is kind of the zone of control where hopefully you're in front and the monsters don't advance past you, but knowing our group, the squishies will run out faster than everyone else. Yes, Kyle, I am looking at your wizard whose name's already escaped me.
Well, I think what's going to happen in this group is there just isn't going to be a front line. Everybody's going to be on the front line because your character is really the only really melee focused one, I think. And we've got all these casters, so there's really no one to kind of make a front line. So everybody's going to have to kind of deal with that and worry about having like defensive magic and stuff.
And this is the first time ever, and I dislike doing it because there are 0 skills tied to it, which I kind of am not the biggest fan of, that Constitution is one of my highest skills. It's tied for highest. Because, you know, in Dex and Constitution, which you never really see. Because I always discredit Constitution a little because it's like, you get another hit point or two. And then you think about it, with a Constitution of 16, at level 20, you get 60 more hit points than somebody without with a Constitution of 10. And I'm like, wow, that's a really big number.
I actually, in Dwayne's Princes of the Apocalypse, my wizard, my second highest score was Constitution.
Yeah.
Partly because of that, and partly because it's for concentration. So
I suspect to see a warlock archetype eventually that focuses on Constitution, because if they do a blood magic thing, it's probably going to be the warlocks, if not sorcerers.
I would think so.
So
Chrissy chose the Great Old One as her patron, it looks like. So that will be interesting.
Yeah, you got to make her do crazy stuff. You got to be like, the Great Old One wants you to smack people who are wearing hats.
Yeah. It's kind of fun because I'm hoping that every character is going to have something for me to play with. You know, like her, it's her patron. You know, with Dwayne and Chrissy, they both have either a fiend or a celestial parent that could come into things at some point.
Dwayne's got wild magic, which you could say, the table's cool, but right now you know what's happening.
And you've got this order, so you never know when they'll want you to do something.
And you know, I had other ideas for characters, you know, if the mystic thing wasn't or didn't work out. Like one of my first one was, and we talked about this back when at the very beginning, Princes of the Apocalypse.
Yeah.
My collector warlock, who isn't magic, he just uses magic items. And so he's the kind of snake oil salesman pawn shop owner who uses a bunch of magic rings and stuff. Of course, he is a warlock and he casts stuff like a warlock. But the flavor is that he uses his rings and a bunch of necklaces and stuff that he has to do that. And then, of course, my backup character for this is the Tempest Cleric Minotaur. Should be interesting, but I'm excited to playtest. And I think if I was going to playtest with any group, this would be a good one. Because you know we're pretty well versed in 5th, and we've all got our own like little viewpoints.
I really like the Minotaur Tempest Cleric idea. That sounded pretty cool.
I love it just because the thought of using his horns as like lightning rods and stuff. That kind of got me where I was going.
Yeah, and actually, you know, we were talking about concentration. You don't even have to worry about that because you don't have to roll when you take damage. So
yeah. Is Order of the Immortal? Yes, their concentration cannot be broken.
You're probably going to be concentrating pretty much all the time. So that's a really good thing.
Unless I've said otherwise during battle, I am always concentrating celerity. That's always on, but in battle, I'm liable to say, okay, I'm swapping over to Iron Durability, which takes a bonus action, of course. But things like celerity are always on because while concentrating, I have advantage on initiative checks. So whenever you say, hey, combat, or things like rapid reactions neat, where you spend a key point. God, I'm going to say that a lot.
Side point.
A side point to turn off being surprised, which is interesting. And stuff like that. And then, you know, once the battle's head on, once the skirmishing's done, you swap over to Iron Durability.
Activating a discipline's just a bonus action, right?
Yeah, so, to turn on
even
concentration.
If for some reason you didn't say that or I was being a dick, it's still only a bonus action.
Yeah. But, but the idea is he's pretty much always he's always in butterfly mode of celerity. Yeah. But when he goes cocoon, also AKA Iron Durability, that'll happen.
Yeah, because I mean, the only thing that affects concentration is doing something else that takes concentration. So mechanically, there's no reason you couldn't just be concentrating all the time. So why not? And it kind of fits like that, like mental discipline. You know, it's like trying to be in a meditative state, like at all times.
And the things like the celerity thing, you have to be concentrating on it. Otherwise, if you're not already, then you can't use its effect because you roll initiative at the beginning of combat.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I was
Yeah,
guessing you were going to do the other two and not do celerity, but
no, I mean the psionic weapon. There's obviously a lot of value in the strength of some of the abilities there. But I'm not worried too much about doing a ton of damage. I'm worried more, kind of the the durability,
right,
the
right.
outlasting and helping because the potential lack of a healer plus because if I take damage, I can heal myself. Um, I mean, it does take an action while concentrating on durability to roll hit dice, um, but it can be done and stuff like that. I mean,
I'm
you could
most
well,
curious to see how it turns out if we end up not having a healer.
yeah,
I think you guys will be all right because like you're going to be okay because you have some kind of healing abilities for yourself. And what I'm hoping will happen is it will just mean that you might have to rest a little more often and be a little bit more cautious going into combat, which I think would actually be a good thing. would make it a little bit more kind of gritty and have a little bit more like pucker factor.
yeah.